Hello YouTube, this is Ben Gessel. This video is going to be talking a lot more about more for piano teachers, and I think some things on here will certainly try out with other instruments as well. With beginners and intermediates, especially in piano, this is kind of what I'm gearing this video to. I'm calling this video Technique, Theory, Musicianship. These are kind of some things that I do, independent of what method I might use for a certain student. But there's some kind of things that we're talking about when we're talking about the building blocks of music education for a kid. These are, I guess, kind of like a triangle in a way: technique, theory, and musicianship. You can might include other aspects, but everything kind of boils down to these main three areas of music. Theory is everything having to do with the cerebral side of music, understanding it, how it works, and everything. Technique is how do you get better. What's going on with is more especially regarding the physical dimension of performance. Musicianship, of course, is all the things we do to make music musical, and all the all the expressive things, all the music, phrasing, and everything. Interpretation, understanding of music, and that sort of thing. And tunes, solos, that sort of thing. So, okay. These are, again, I'm going to focus on the things that I will talk about and teach in addition to what is in methods. Let's start with technique. So what I'm finding is often the case is, a lot of teachers will emphasize having a certain, keep your fingers curved, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of this is something I think I feel like I'm a broken record. I'm sure a lot of other people have mentioned this as well. When you have a little tyke taking lessons, the youngest most kids should be taking lessons really at 6, something like that. 6 or 7. Man, those muscles are still developing. Fingers are teeny, So I mean, you can mention it. You can talk about it. You can say, try to keep your fingers a little bit curved, a little bit. But those muscles are still developing. I mean, it's okay if those fingers are a teensy bit flatter, right? So when you start talking about your thumb crossing under, that sort of thing, the scales, I mean, by that point, hopefully, you want the student to be, and have enough of the natural curve to their fingers when they play that's not going to be an issue for them. But so having your fingers curved, it's important, and it should be mentioned. But really, there's a physical dimension to it as well that every teacher needs to take into account. That being said, let's talk about having your thumb cross under, and that's when your fingers crossing over. There are a lot of good YouTube videos out there about these kinds of things already. The only thing I was going to mention here is that it's too easy to have your students. This is more later on, like your later elementary to intermediate range, with working on scales. It's too easy to once they can play something fairly fluently in 8th notes, that sort of thing, and they're getting that thumb under, they're getting those fingers crossing over. It's too easy to let them off the hook and say, "Okay, you're okay, it's good." You should always mention that there's always ways to further perfect technique. And like just mention, try to explain to the student that that's good, but it's not, as good as it could ever be. But that's not the end all, right? Yeah. So, and there's things like wrist rolls and this motion up and down. Some of these kinds of things, I think when a student is more in their, well, I suppose very advanced kids, you can get some of that. You always can get some of that. But really to have a student play with more of that, those wrist motions and on arm weight, that tends to be more generally for at least for preteens and teens when they're able to really use those techniques in a musical sense. It's amazing to have kids. By all means, like I can remind myself from more advanced kids that are going quickly. Absolutely, can teach that stuff, but so I'm saying in some cases you can go further, but only in the case for students that are really, especially in the case for students that are really progressing rapidly through younger, like 7 or 8, 9. So a few other things I talk about, at least for beginners and intermediates, a bit more than many method books. What I hear a lot is, of course, uneven rhythms, right? In a not rubato piece, I think, this is one of the subjects that everybody talks about, metronomes, and how you know where to start, what tempo to start a piece, and work it up to a faster tempo. A teacher can kind of give some guidelines, but it's really up to the student, really. I think not enough sometimes is mentioned where you say, okay, so, let's work on this piece for at least a few weeks. This is one of those metronome pieces, right? But the teacher could say, this is a good rule of thumb for goals for each day, or for half the week, or for the week. Go from quarter note equals 70 to quarter note equals 100. For a certain piece, it might be pretty reasonable, but maybe the next week you go up to 120. But 70, then 76, and 80, 84, 88, 92, 96, whatever. So you can definitely divide up the metronome like that, metronome markings. But really, more important than that is the student being aware of their uneven playing. So how do you do that? Well, maybe how do you help a student to hear their uneven playing? Or how do you help them use the metronome better? You have to have them know that they need to sometimes play at a slower tempo, work through certain sections physically. Work through that, those muscle motions a little bit more. And not cooperating, do this a little bit with your fingers, right? Give yourself a break, clear your mind, come back to it. Do the same thing, work through those muscles again. But you have to help them to understand sometimes that if you can't move on, you can't move on, but you have to be able to play a whole piece, and there might be a section, you have to play the whole piece at a certain metronome marking before you can go up to the next one, and, you're only as strong as your weakest section, and those weakest sections are going to hold you back. But maybe, obviously tape recorder works, but then you get student will get self-conscious when they know they're being recorded. So, but I think it can help. At least try it once. Students should be able to hear themselves play. There's a point at which, of course, you know what the right notes are, you have a good idea what the right rhythms are. So absolutely you should sometimes to record yourself, and So again, working with metronome, of course, you know, some students have a bit better sense of internal rhythm than others, but I think there's no side to this, of course, with choosing metronomes, right? Well, I think metronomes are more effective when they are loud, not grating, but they have a lower pitch, so something that's more of a almost you could feel, right? I like those. It's sort of like high pitched ones that are like really annoying. Right? I like the big. I mean, some folks like the bigger ones. Have a deeper metronome click. As long as they can hear it. The main thing is they can be able to hear it. It doesn't sound annoying. It doesn't sound like something they would not like doing. But really, it's effective, I think, when you're working through a tough section and trying to keep up with a certain beat, or you can start out a piece, have the metronome clicking, and then you stop it, and then you keep having that internal rhythm as you play. It's kind of, you have to kind of go back and forth a little bit sometimes, I think, with I would want students to do that. The thing is, too, with beginners and intermediates, no matter how well you try to explain how to practice, and maybe I don't do this well as I could, but beginners and intermediates are among certain those students that don't know how to practice as effectively as advanced players, and certainly not professionals. Or, I mean, there's you get to a point where you know how to practice. You know how to practice more sufficiently. You know the techniques, or you know at least most of them. You can always learn a few more, but you know what works and what doesn't when you're practicing. The kids don't always know, so I think that's another thing that can be mentioned a bit more is how to practice. So this is all kind of more on the technique end of things, along with making sure that the students get the right kind of angle with their elbows, and they're not sitting too high or too low. Everything's comfortable for them. Believe me, oh man, a lot of kids will want to lean forward too much because they haven't developed the muscles so much in the arm, so it's not a big deal for them. Say, don't do this, kind of thing. I've had students lean forward more, or have be too close to the piano. Well, you can be a little bit too close, a little too far away. A lot of students will tend to lean in more. Actually, that's what I just done more anyway. But anyway, so it's just something to keep in mind. So theory. Gosh, for some students I spend half the lesson on theory. I think it's okay to do that sometimes, but there's because it's ear training, and there's notation sometimes, and then there's just understanding harmony, basic harmony. So there's just reading notes, flashcard work, maybe on their own. There's rhythms and counting exercises, and there's I don't know. you could keep going on. So theory is just a vast subject. It's a solfege thing too. I mean, if you were to spend on a lesson, half-hour lesson, 10 minutes on technique, 10 minutes on theory, 10 minutes on musicianship, that's a good mix, I think, for a half-hour lesson. Of course, double that for an hour lesson, 20, 20, 20. Of course, warm-ups would be probably more associated with technique for the most part. Musicianship, just wrap things up here a little bit with this video. Well, so this is where you should explain. Sometimes tell the student this is hopefully one of the reasons why you went into music or piano is because you want to express things, emotions, or thoughts, or visual things, or whatever. This is the artistic side of music, and so there's always ways of having these effects and styles and things, and how do you do it? How does it work? And of course, you get to a certain point where some students, when they get to a certain more advanced level, they can take all this stuff and become composers if they want to. But understanding music at a, you know, a deeper level, more advanced level. But absolutely, to have students sing. Now, most of my students don't want to sing, so I sing. Right? I don't mind, and but you sing the way that you want them to play it. Um, but a student, should be striving to. Um, you should try to have every student you can, um, especially beyond mid elementary and above. You should have them really try to play something more musically that they're working on. Now, sometimes that might mean just playing a forte differently than a piano. Other times, you can get more to, say, using vibrato. You say, yeah, just don't use vibrato to be as an excuse to slow the piece down. You say, this music sighs at this point. Do you hear the music sighing? Oh, this music kind of breathes at this point. You hear the music breathing. The music wants to push forward here. Sometimes the musicianship is taught in a very, a lot of technique and theory. Sometimes these things are taught in a very pedantic or old-fashioned way that kind of alienates students. It does. I mean, if a teacher were to hear themselves and kind of take a step back and say, wait a minute, I imagine it's probably the case that some students find me to be very boring, very you see me as being kind of like a old fuddy-duddy or something along those lines. This is a drudgery. This is. I know this is coming from this teacher. I wonder if some of my students have ever felt this way about me. I know that this talk is coming. Even if it's something about musicianship, he's going to talk about this, right? I've done the same thing, with my teachers. I dreaded, of course. I mean, it might get to a point where I don't do that anymore, but occasionally here and there, still, But I don't know. It's just that, a student, we're talking about understanding music. Apart from the cerebral theory thing and apart from the physical technique thing, we're talking about just students understanding the music itself. Of course, they can always listen to the music. I think this is, again, my experience, film scores are just immediately understood better. Students will have little difficulty playing a film score that they know well, very musically. A lot of the pieces that are folk tunes are just method pieces or classical pieces sometimes. Some classical pieces, though, students will get into. Isn't it funny? The pieces with the more memorable melodies. The pieces with beautiful harmonies or catchy rhythms. My students dive into them. They love them. They'll have no trouble playing pieces with lots of musicality. With more boring pieces, more pedantic pieces, they'll sound boring and pedantic. They're bored with them. It's something to keep in mind. You want students to be engaged. You want them to also try to appreciate all the good music, all the worthwhile music as well, even the etudes, the exercises. But hopefully there's some food for thought here for some teachers out there teaching piano. Some of that will cross over with other instruments as well, I'm sure. All right, I'll catch you guys later. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye.